They call me a blind father, but on that fateful night, I saw more clearly than ever. My son wasn't just drowning in debt. He wanted to push me into prison to swallow the villa and his mother's life insurance payout. When red and blue lights swept across the house's facade, I understood. The reunion dinner was a stage play, and the lead role they'd assigned me was the thief. But they didn't expect that after years of silence, I had learned to watch and to wait. And from the very trap they set, I flipped the board so the whole world could see the truth. Before I take you through the journey, from the snap of the trap at the Scottsdale Villa to the trial that sent my son away for 12 years, please subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. You are the reason I keep telling family secrets that most people don't dare to speak aloud. People say dinner is when a family sits down and shares the day's stories. But that night, under the yellow glow of the crystal chandelier hanging in the ceiling of the Scottsdale Villa, I understood. Some meals only expose fractures that can't be mended. Caleb, my son, clenched his fists and suddenly slammed the table. The sound bounced off porcelain dishes, tipping the salt shaker so grains scattered across the wood like shards of glass. I started, my fork still stuck mid-bite in a piece of meatloaf. Dad, this month we need another 2,500. His voice was heavier, more bitter than the slam. I set the fork down slowly, hearing metal, touch ceramic with a chilling ring. Across from me, Vanessa twisted her wedding band, makeup smudged with tears. She'd been crying before she even sat. Everyone saw that. Enough, I said, my voice harder than I expected. You're 29, Caleb. It's time to take care of your wife and child yourself. He shot to his feet, his big frame blotting the chandelier's light. His face flushed. I couldn't tell whether from rage or despair. The fridge behind him hummed steadily, as if recording every void between our heavy breaths. You're selfish. If Mom were still here, she'd understand. She'd help. Evelyn's name left his mouth like a punch. I clenched my jaw. 5 years on, and still, whenever he didn't get his way, he hauled out the dead as a shield. Vanessa sniffled, pressing a napkin to her trembling mouth. On the table, the green beans had gone cold. The butter congealed like the grease left after a fight. I pushed back my chair. Wood legs scraped tile with a screech that made Vanessa jump. This month I already gave you 1,200. Before that, it was the wedding venue, the apartment deposit you never moved into. Then Vanessa's medical bills. How many times has it been? Please, Dad, Vanessa whispered, eyes glued to the plate as if the china's pattern could solve their debts. I turned away. The mix of cold meat and stifled air clawed at my throat. No, I won't enable this anymore. Caleb panted, chest heaving. Vanessa stopped crying, but her eyes were empty. The wall clock struck 7:35, the harsh sound like a judge's gavel. I left the table, my steps heavy as lost rounds. Behind me, I heard Vanessa murmur to Caleb, urgent like a secret directive. I couldn't make out words, but the push in her tone stabbed my heart. The wooden stairs creaked under my feet, carrying me away from a ruined meal. The hallway was pitch dark, lit only by the bedroom door, a lonely lighthouse in the night. Inside, Evelyn's photo sat by the lamp, her smile frozen in a world where we were still whole. I lowered myself to the edge of the bed. The old mattress sank under my tired weight. Her side remained untouched 5 years on. No one dared disturb it. My fingers shook as they touched the glass. Evelyn, my wife. I still heard her last words in the hospital. Don't let our son live forever in our shadow. Make him stand up on his own. Downstairs, the argument thinned, dwindling to a faraway murmur. I closed my eyes, breathed deep, and knew tomorrow couldn't be more of the same. I sat in the dark, looked into Evelyn's eyes in the frame, and clearly heard Vanessa below whisper, "It has to be done tomorrow night." I sat in my room, the desk lamp spilling light over a stack of old papers in the oak drawer, each one bearing my name and a familiar signature. personal loans, emergency withdrawals, IOUs from the local bank. I counted each sum, my chest heavy. 5 years since Evelyn died, more than 52,000 had drained from my retirement to feed what Caleb called emergencies. The still night made memory rise, crisp as yesterday. I remembered that autumn morning I sold the vintage Harley, my restoration project after Evelyn's funeral. A young man bought it, his eyes bright with joy. I stifled a sigh as I handed him the key. $20,000 in hand, I told myself. This is for love, for family, for the wedding. Caleb gave a stiff smile. Vanessa rushed into the reception decor. I sat in a corner, listened to the test music, empty inside. Months later, they called to say they'd changed their minds, not using the venue. The deposit was gone. I only nodded and accepted. Then came the Alaska trip I'd waited a lifetime for. A week of fishing in the snow country, the ticket I'd saved for 10 years. On the day we planned the flight, Caleb brought a lease for a 2-bedroom. He said he needed $3,000 for a deposit to start a new life. I looked at the ticket, then at my son's eyes, and closed my suitcase. That apartment sat empty in the end. Circumstances changed, he said. I never set foot in Alaska. 6 months ago, Vanessa complained of terrible headaches and feared something serious. I took her through every hospital, paid every bill, every prescription. In the end, the doctor said it was just stress migraines. I remember those extra shifts on the job site, my back screaming so much I trembled just bending to pick up a hammer. 57, and I hauled myself through 12-hour shifts to pay debts I shouldn't have borne. On the table, Evelyn's perfume dropped little by little. I'd open it to breathe her scent, as if she were still here. But tonight, it accused me. Why did you let it go this far? In the mirror, I saw a gray-haired man, shoulders bent under burdens not his own. I whispered, when does love turn into endless rescue? Below, Caleb's voice rose again, not angry now, but urgent, as if negotiating with Vanessa. I caught fragments, not words, but the rhythm was rapid, pressed. I pressed an ear to the wall. My heart thudded. It has to be done tomorrow night. There's no other way. Each word landed in my ear, cold as steel. I stepped back, gripping the desk. The stacks of debt lay there, thin as charges. All of it added to a single figure, a single truth. My love had been exploited, and my own son was calculating something darker than everything before. Dawn in Scottsdale spread through the kitchen window, desert light flashing like thin knives across the tile. I'd been up since 5, accustomed to brewing coffee early, the smell of fresh ground beans filtering through the house. A neighbor's dog barked, the far-off radio droned, everything calm except me, who hadn't slept a full hour since last night. At 7:10 in the morning, footsteps thudded down the stairs. Caleb appeared, hair messy, t-shirt wrinkled, but his voice carried an odd cheer. Dad, good news. Brightcore Systems just called. They hired me. Senior IT analyst, starting salary $68,000. I stood still, clutching the hot mug. Vanessa followed in a light robe, her makeup oddly meticulous compared to yesterday's haggard face. See? I told you. This is a new start. She clapped softly, eyes playing to an invisible audience. I looked at my son. There was a flicker of embarrassment in his eyes. But the patter was smooth. Benefits, insurance, retirement plan. Too perfect, too slick, like rehearsed in a mirror. He even mentioned the exact call time. Yesterday evening at 7:10. That number punched my memory because at that time, the police logged the report of Silvercrest Jewelers being robbed. A coincidence. Too suspicious. For a moment, I wanted to believe. I wanted to feel proud the way Evelyn wished. But last night's whisper yanked me back. The tomorrow night, it has to be done. Caleb's cheer now sounded like clumsy theater. The smell of burnt toast blackened the kitchen. Vanessa hurried to scrape scorched bits into the sink, crumbs clicking like falling ash. The scene jolted a memory of Evelyn. She used to teach Caleb that responsibility isn't a dirty word, The phrase echoed like a summons. I sat, the newspaper unopened, listening to the clock's tick. Good. In that case, we should celebrate tonight, I said slowly, testing. A backyard barbecue, like the old days. Caleb nodded eagerly, smile too wide. Great idea, Dad. I'll help with the fire. Vanessa slipped in. I'll make the potato salad you like. I caught a flash of worry in her eyes, quick, then gone behind a smile. It was like she knew the script, but forgot a line. I sipped coffee. Bitterness slid down my throat. Evelyn's voice chimed from far-off memory, Caleb's 10th birthday morning, telling him, a real man knows how to fend for himself. That memory, my boy's grin over candles, clashed with the man standing before me. I folded the paper and looked up. Sunlight sliced through the glass and fell on his face, and I knew. Tonight's barbecue wouldn't be a celebration. It would be a test, and maybe the place where everything shatters. That afternoon, the desert sun glowed like a fireball, laying its last light across the tiled yard behind the villa. I set the grill in the center. Black coals ringed. Starter can lie beside it. Everything tidy, like a ritual. The air carried the dry tang of cactus and sand, mingled with the marinade Vanessa had prepped. The ceiling fan in the living room squeaked, and glassware clicked. Caleb's voice rose, too hearty by half. Dad, it's been a while since we've done this. Like when I was a kid, remember? I nodded faintly, said nothing. My back was to the glass. My eyes traced the coals catching. But at the edge of my vision, something moved inside. Caleb bent over my dark blue backpack, the one I still took to job sites. His motions were furtive. His eyes darted. He eased the zipper. I held my breath, frozen, fingers gripping the cold tongs. The sliding door reflected his quick hands pulling a small, black-wrapped bundle from his pocket. Practiced and neat, he shoved it deep into the main compartment, pressed it between leather gloves and a steel ruler. It took less than 30 seconds, but to me it stretched like slow motion. The way he straightened the zipper, brushed his hands on his jeans, and lifted his head with feigned calm, those gave him away more than they hid. I swallowed. The coal smoke stung my eyes. In the kitchen, Vanessa moved back and forth, spoon chiming against a glass bowl, normal to a chilling degree. Caleb came out smiling as if nothing had happened. Dad, are the coals ready? He grinned, rubbing his hands, watching the spark like an innocent. I turned and poked at the glow. Almost. Give it a few minutes. My voice was even, but my heart hammered. In my mind, pieces locked together. The vanishing money, the stage tears, Evelyn's warnings, and now my son is turning his father's backpack into a stash. Children's laughter drifted from a neighbor's yard. A dog barked. Someone blasted pop music. A calm veil over a stage of lies. I took a long breath and kept acting. The barbecue had to go on. But from that second I knew the game had begun, and I would no longer be led by the nose. When night fell and the porch light threw trembling shadows on the wall, I excused myself to fetch spice from the kitchen and slipped into the living room. Vanessa's perfume mingled with the smoke on my shirt, a strange scent of an abnormal evening. The dark blue backpack lay on the sofa's corner where I'd left it that morning. I listened. Water hissed upstairs, the shower. Caleb was bathing. In the kitchen, Vanessa stirred salad, spoon tapping. I had minutes. I pulled the zipper. The metal sound sliced the air. Inside, old leather gloves, a brass carpenter's rule, my sketch notebook. I dug while my pulse pounded. At the bottom of the main compartment lay the black-wrapped bundle, exactly as reflected in the glass. I slid on the leather gloves. My hands trembled. The stiff paper crackled like crumpled foil. When I opened it, the desk light flashed on a surface bright enough to hurt. A diamond ring, a center stone as big as a kernel of corn, a halo of smaller diamonds set in gleaming white gold. Its weight told me everything. This wasn't fake. I knew it was worth at least tens of thousands, a sum that could claw a fallen man to air, or drown a family. I sank onto the couch. cold sweat on my neck. Evelyn liked jewelry, but we'd never been rich enough for more than a few $100 pieces. Now, in my gloved palm, sat the evidence of a crime, placed right in my house, in my backpack, like a fine woven snare. Upstairs, Caleb whistled lightly over the shower, a jaunty, empty tune. I squeezed the ring. It felt like a hot coal. I understood. If I left it in my backpack, in a few minutes, when someone knocked, I'd become the accomplice. Evelyn's voice floated from her deathbed. "Martin, make him stand up." Years of pain hardened into cold resolve. I wouldn't sit and watch. I rewrapped the ring exactly, retracing each fold, and slid it into my jacket pocket. I restored the backpack, perfect, untouched. I stood and glanced into the yard. Coals glowed red, the light flickering up Caleb's face through the glass. He still smiled, playing the dutiful son at the grill. I breathed deep. The plan had formed. If my son wanted to make me a criminal, I would return his goods, to the one place every eye would look. I climbed the stairs, fingers tight around the black paper in my pocket. Each step popped like a tattletale. I paused mid-landing to listen. Water still rushed in the bathroom, Caleb whistling a pop refrain. In the kitchen, Vanessa chopped onions, the knife tapping, oblivious to my absence. I went on, my heart pounding. The upstairs hall glowed faintly from a small window. Motes drifted like tired memories. Caleb's door stood ajar. I nudged it. The hinge squeaked, enough to make me hold my breath. Inside, the room smelled like a mix. Vanessa's perfume on the blanket, barbecue smoke through the open window. On the desk, the laptop was shut. Papers scattered, half of them unpaid. Bills. I scanned and headed to the wood dresser. The second drawer, where socks and underwear lived, was my choice. I eased it open, hands shaking, eyes cold. Rolled socks, hastily folded undergarments. I made a hollow at the bottom, pulled out the black paper, pushed it deep, and pressed it between layers of cloth. The crinkles sounded louder than a hammer in the still room. I closed the drawer, set everything straight, and there was no trace of entry. Sweat dotted my brow, but my hands had steadied. Step by step, I backed away and glanced out the window. In the yard, through the glass, Caleb flipped meat with a grin. Too normal a scene if you didn't know that minutes earlier he'd planted a stolen ring in his own father's bag. I sat on the bed's edge, exhaled, then rose. The room held no sign of me, save the warmth my hand had left on the drawer. I stepped into the hall and eased the door, just as a siren moaned from afar. My skull tensed. 1, then 2, then 3 engines rumbled to a stop at our gate. I leaned to the hall window. Red and blue police lights swept the quiet street. My heart cinched. Caleb looked up from the grill. A glint of excitement flashed across his face. I understood. The act he'd staged had reached its cue. He didn't know the script had changed. Patrol car noise stirred the neighborhood. Doors cracked open, silhouettes peered. Lights flashed in parked car windows. I stood on the stairs, heart hammering, as 3 officers strode up the stone path. Leading them was a short-haired woman in a crisp uniform, Detective Rowan, a name everyone in Scottsdale knows. Tough, relentless. Her hand rested lightly on her radio. Her eyes sliced the scene like a blade. Caleb set the tongs down and feigned shock. "What's going on?" he asked, a little too theatrical. I came down the steps slowly, holding my calm. The sliding door opened. Desert wind brought barbecue smoke and the neighbor's dog's frantic bark. The steak's burnt tang hung thick, another layer of tension. Rowan spoke, clipped. "We received a report last night from Silvercrest Jewelers at 7:10 in the evening. A diamond ring valued at more than $20,000 was stolen by a young, tall male wearing a hood. Shortly after, the hotline received an anonymous call. The caller said Mr. Martin Hale was acting suspiciously with a backpack and might be involved. That's why we're here to check. The store's report also lists the diamond's serial number. If we find a match, that's direct evidence." I hadn't spoken when Caleb cut in, voice trembling but practiced. I just remembered. Earlier, I saw Dad acting sneaky, holding something and shoving it into his backpack. When I heard you mention stolen property, it seemed suspicious. Maybe he's hiding something. He formed the words with the face of a son heavy with duty, eyes aimed at me in counterfeit doubt, as if forced to accuse his father. Vanessa stepped from the kitchen carrying a bowl of salad, face bloodless. Seeing the police, she dropped it, glass shattered, green skittering like the evidence of a ruined meal. Rowan didn't bite right away. She turned to me, calm. "Mr. Hale, will you consent to a search?" I swallowed and kept my voice even. "Yes. My backpack's in the living room." Caleb drew a long breath, trying to restrain himself, but the edge of his mouth twitched, as if victory was near. We went inside. The dark blue backpack lay like nothing on the sofa. An officer lifted it to the coffee table. Rowan pulled on gloves and slid the zipper. The metal rasp tore open the silence. My heart pounded, but I kept my face still. Out came familiar things: old leather gloves, a steel rule, a sketchbook, and beat-up boots. Caleb hovered, eyes bright, waiting for the moment. But pocket after pocket, every compartment, held only a working man's tools. No ring, no black paper, nothing. Rowan looked up, frowning slightly. "You're certain?" she asked, eyes on Caleb. He faltered, voice pitching high. Yes, I saw it. My dad shoved a packet into the main compartment. You have to check more carefully." Skepticism tightened Rowan's gaze. I lifted a shoulder, mild. "Perhaps you should try his room." The words cut the air like a blade. Rowan froze for a beat, then nodded to two officers. One headed for the stairs. "No, you can't. That's—" Caleb lunged to block him. Rowan stepped in firm. "We have reasonable cause based on your actions and conflicting statements. We'll search. If we find evidence, we'll take you into custody and read you your Miranda rights." I eased back against the chair, palms damp. Before me, the dutiful mask was cracking, panic and despair glaring through. In minutes, the truth would stand naked. Boots thudded on the stairs, heavy enough to stamp my heart. Rowan followed, eyes never leaving Caleb. My son shook openly, fists clenched. "You have no right. This is my private home." Rowan cut him off, cool. "You're contradicting yourself. If there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to fear." Caleb swallowed. His face went chalk white. I trailed last, holding distance, feeling the hallway's cold seep through the walls I knew so well. His door was ajar. Rowan signaled Officer Martinez. The room was a mess. Clothes slung on a chair, laptop shut on the desk, papers strewn. Vanessa's perfume and barbecue smoke mingled. The faint scent of charred meat lingered, a nag that the celebration had spoiled into a search. Rowan wasted no time. "Second drawer," she said, as if guided by instinct. Martinez crouched and pulled the wood. Rolled socks tumbled. He swept them aside and reached the bottom. Paper crackled, and the flashlight hit a black-wrapped object. Caleb screamed, "No, don't!" Too late. Martinez lifted the bundle and peeled back the paper. A diamond ring glittered, the center stone throwing hard light like a knife, reflecting the truth. Rowan raised it to the light, then dropped it into a clear evidence bag. I heard the zip seal snap, final as a slamming door. She nodded to Martinez. "Straight to the lab. Print the wrapping. Let's see who actually touched it." Caleb's face blanched. His eyes bulged. His mouth stuttered. "No, that's not mine. There must be a mistake." He flailed, hands shaking, voice thinning. Rowan narrowed her eyes, low and steady. "This ring is seized as evidence. We'll match it to Silvercrest's report. This isn't an arrest yet, but both of you must come in for statements now." Caleb yelped, harshly. "My dad. He set me up. He—" Rowan raised a hand, iron. "What you say will be recorded. For now, this is the start of an investigation." Vanessa collapsed in the doorway, sobbing for real. No theater left. I stood frozen, legs numbed. In that instant, every ounce of patience, love blind as it was, every extra shift I pulled to shield him, all of it fractured like a mirror reflecting diamond light, and I knew the truth had stepped into daylight, and much more would be dragged there. Rowan shut her folder, voice even and hard. The ring stays in evidence. Mr. Hale and Caleb's statements are recorded. No formal charges yet, but both must be available upon summons. Do not leave the city. The words hung like a suspended blade. They left with the sealed bag, and the house sank into tense silence. Caleb and Vanessa were kept at the station for hours to finish paperwork. I returned to the quiet house. Even the walls seemed to sigh. That night, while they were still giving statements, I entered Caleb's office. The chair was skewed like someone had leapt up. I opened his desk drawer, debt notices mixed with trash. In the middle lay a scrawled note, messy but unmistakable. If Dad gets arrested, Villa Poist's ours, debt's gone, new life. I held the scrap, my hand shaking, my heart squeezed. In the living room, Evelyn's portrait seemed to stare. Her eyes stern. Do you see now? The next morning, Arizona light blazed on clay tiles, as if no storm had passed. But the house had changed. At the gate, the tracks of 3 patrol cars still scored the gravel. Neighbors clustered, eyes trailing me when I fetched the paper. Whispers rode the desert breeze. They say he was suspected of stealing a ring. Police at his house. An old man would do that? Or was it the sun? No one spoke to me, but the looks were enough. I shut the door. The latch clicked like solitude. On the kitchen table lay the local paper. Silvercrest Jewelers robbed of a ring worth more than $20,000. Police investigate at a Scottsdale home. No name, but the street knew. Caleb and Vanessa returned late, playing the victim. Caleb made sure to speak loudly to a neighbor on his porch. My dad, he's really not well. I just want to protect the family. I heard it all. Each word skinned my heart. That evening, Frank Dalton knocked on the door with 2 cups of hot coffee. A retired cop. He knew half the precinct. I heard some things, Martin, Frank said, setting the cups down. There's something off. That anonymous caller knew you were sneaking with the backpack. Who'd know that, except someone inside the house? I was silent, my chest pinched. Frank went on. Also, I've noticed your boys deep in casinos. A friend at Prairie Winds says Caleb's in for more than $40,000. If he wanted out, the fastest way is using you. I gripped the mug. The heat burned my palm. Frank looked straight at me. You have Evelyn's life insurance, don't you? I nodded slightly. $240,000. I've never touched it. Frank sighed. If you go to prison for theft, the house flips to him, plus that policy. With his debts, that's the perfect exit. Loose pieces, missing money, crisis excuses, the sly look at the barbecue, locked into a black picture. My son wasn't just greedy. He aimed to cage me so he could take everything Evelyn left. I drew a long breath, folded the note, and slid it into my pocket. Something in me had shifted. I would no longer be the patient father. I would be the survivor, and I would fight to the end. In the days after, the house became a cage. Every time I stepped out, neighbors stared with half-belief. Caleb played victim so well that people came to comfort him. You've endured so much, Caleb. I stood mute, a stone in my throat. But I wasn't just enduring now. I had Frank. One afternoon, Frank called me over. His living room, lined with law books and old certificates, felt like an outpost. He set a thin file before me, a wry smile. I got a friend to pull Silvercrest's tapes. Their security video. Suspect in a black jacket, hood up, about 1.85 meters tall. Martin, that's not your build. I stared at printed stills, a slighter frame than mine, a familiar uneven gait. I knew it instantly. Caleb. My heart clenched, hurt and fury. Frank slid more papers. Bank report. Took favors to get it. Caleb owes $41,800 on credit cards. Most of it at Prairie Winds Casino. Motive, clear as day. My hand shook over the statements. The red numbers danced. All those trips, all those extra shifts. Burned at the tables. Vanessa was the weak link. Frank suggested I talk to her. One evening, I found her on the porch, eyes red, mascara streaked. I approached without anger. Vanessa, I know Caleb dragged you into this, but you still have a choice. Stay silent, and he'll take you down with him. She trembled, dodged my eyes, then blurted, He said, if Dad gets arrested, everything will be ours. The house, the life insurance, and he'll have enough to pay. I didn't know it would go this far. Her voice broke in the oven-hot wind. I turned away, my heart both ice and fire. What I'd feared was now true. Caleb meant to lock me up to seize the villa and Evelyn's policy, a full plan made of cowardice and greed. I walked off, leaving Vanessa in her own fear. That night, I went to Frank. He was ready, living room table loaded with files and steaming mugs. Frank concluded, we have motive, financials, and video. Now we make it enough that the DA can't look away. I've reached a solid attorney. He'll get this into court. I nodded, gripping Evelyn's frame in my pocket. Her face glowed in memory, gentle and resolute. That night, I sat in the living room and took in the house Evelyn had shaped with love. Now it was a death hand, where my son wanted me to lose. I swore I'd turn the tables. The hall light pooled over Frank's packet, silver crest footage, card debts, the scribble found in Caleb's desk, and Vanessa's confession. Brilliant shards forming one picture, my son's plot. In a small item in today's paper, a line read, Maricopa County Court to hold preliminary hearing in 2 weeks. I set the paper down and drew a long breath. 2 weeks. Only 2 weeks to prepare for the final fight, where truth would either save me or bury me. The day of the hearing dawned under a gray Arizona sky, a dust veil over everything. I wore a dark blue suit, old and neat, a faded tie knotted tight. In the mirror, I faced myself, hair salted, eyes no longer evasive. Frank walked me in, his hand on my shoulder. Martin, you've taken enough. Today is for getting the truth back. The Maricopa courthouse throbbed with people. Local press flashed lenses as I entered. I caught whispers. He was accused of stealing the ring? No, they say it's the son. The words moved past like desert wind. My heart didn't shake anymore. In the courtroom, Caleb sat at the defendant's table, white shirt wrinkled, eyes skittering. Vanessa in the gallery, pale, hands knotted like a plea. My lawyer, Grant, a steady middle-aged man, stood to begin. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Martin Hale, was framed by his own son. Today we will prove it with evidence that cannot be denied. The prosecutor countered crisply, We have the ring found in Caleb Hale's room, but there is also a report that Mr. Martin had access to the item. We request live testimony. I took the stand. My hand shook slightly, but my voice carried. I saw my son slip a small bundle into my backpack the night of the barbecue. When the police arrived, I suggested they search his room. They found that very ring in his drawer. I looked straight at Caleb. His eyes flickered. Grant rolled the next exhibit, Silver Crest's security video. The big screen glowed with a hooded figure entering at the exact time of the robbery. When he glanced up for a heartbeat, the face was unmistakable. The courtroom rustled. Caleb dropped his head. Sweat slicked his temples. Grant drove it home. The timestamp reads 7:10 in the evening, precisely when Caleb claims he was on a job. Call with Brightcore. His alibi collapses. Then came the financials. Grant put the credit card statements before the judge. More than $40,000 lost at Prairie Winds Casino. The prosecutor was silent. Grant wasn't done. He introduced the forensic report. Fingerprints on the black paper matched Caleb's DMV record 100%. A hammer blow that couldn't be dodged. The peak came when Vanessa testified. Her voice rasped with fear. He said if Dad got arrested, the villa would be ours, and Mrs. Evelyn's life insurance would cover the debts. I didn't dare refuse. I never meant it to go this far. The room buzzed, heads shook, sighs rolled. Caleb leapt up, shouting, No! Dad forced her. He set me up. Judge Mercer cracked the gavel. Order. With video, financial records, and eyewitness testimony, the facts are clear. Caleb Hale, you are charged with grand theft, false reporting, and conspiracy to frame another. This preliminary hearing will proceed to trial. The gavel fell clean. To me, it sounded like an alarm ending a nightmare. Caleb dropped into his chair, drained of blood. Vanessa bowed her head, tears spilling. And I, for the first time in years, felt my chest open with relief. Justice had stepped into the light, wearing the face of truth. The trial began 1 month later. I sat at the witness bench, heart heavy as stone. Caleb wore an orange prison jumpsuit, wrists shackled, eyes darting for rescue. When Judge Mercer read the sentence, his voice filled the darkwood room. Caleb Hale, you are sentenced to 12 years in prison for grand theft, false reporting, and conspiracy to frame another. The gavel struck. Caleb cried out, "Dad, believe me, I just wanted out of the debt." I stared ahead, wordless. After years of rescue upon rescue, only emptiness remained. Vanessa received leniency. She lowered her head as the sentence came. 2 years probation, 100 hours of community service, and vacate the villa within 30 days. As she was let out, she looked to me, pleading, "I'm sorry. I was scared. I couldn't stand up to him." I sighed, meeting her eyes. "At least, in the end, you chose the truth," I said, tired more than angry. "Let that be the start of standing on your own. I can't protect you anymore." Tears streamed, but this time there was no performance. The headlines blared that day. Son frames father to seize house and insurance. 12-year sentence. Bitter titles lined the grocery racks, and I heard neighbors whisper differently. No more suspicious looks. Some nodded as I passed. Some patted my shoulder. "You're strong, Martin." The Scottsdale villa where Evelyn hung every painting now held only shattered memories. I chose to sell. A young couple came to see it, eyes shining like mine and Evelyn's when we married. I signed the transfer. My hand trembled, but it was firm. Passing them the keys, I knew I'd let go of a piece of the past. Before leaving, I took down the last family photo. The bare spot left tiny nail holes, like a scar, proof that memories had lived there, but were no longer mine. Moving day, I packed light, sketchbooks, Evelyn's frame, and a few clothes. All fit in the old pickup's bed. Frank came to see me off, gripping my hand. "You deserve peace." I nodded, eyes stinging, spirit lighter. The realtor handed me an envelope. "Keys to the Denver apartment you requested. A small 1-bedroom facing the Rockies." I held the keys. The cool metal gleamed like a beginning. The truck rolled out of Scottsdale under a rosy sunset. Far off, the Rockies rose, a dark green wall across the horizon. I turned on the radio. A country song poured in. Desert wind pushed through the window, smelling like freedom. New Colorado plates on the pickup flashed in the dusk, proof I'd left Arizona behind. I looked at Evelyn's photo on the passenger seat, her smile flickering in the evening light. "Evelyn," I whispered. I finally let go. The rest is living for myself. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. People ask if I regret anything. I only say, no, because the truth came out. And sometimes the greatest love a father can show isn't one more rescue. It's letting justice teach the last lesson. If you believe justice always finds a way, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. Your voice in the comments gives me the strength to expose secrets that seem destined to stay buried forever.